7, that if you make Havdalah at your meal, so you could really do that if you're having a meal Saturday night. So you set out all the food or whatever else, make Havdalah at the meal. So then you don't make another Brei Paragafen in the meal. Same as Kiddush on Friday night. Some say that, no, that's actually not the case. If you that Havdalah doesn't work like that, because with Kiddush is going into the meal, whereas Havdalah is not really connected to the meal. And unless you washed your hands and then made Havdalah and then made Hamotzi, you should actually end. The Ramo says, make the brocha for after wine and then start your meal and go into it. So you've got these two different opinions. Does the Mishna Brura rule on this? And he says, as far as halakha goes, you certainly should follow the rule that we have of safek brachot lakel. You're not sure whether you should say bracha or not, rather don't say it. And therefore, in this case, we wouldn't say it like the first opinion. So it's not because we follow the first opinion, but because there's an unresolved argument, by default, the first opinion wins, that you don't do it. Okay. The next halakha he says, when you have done it in such a way that you don't need a new bracha on the wine within the meal, you also don't need to say the after bracha for the wine before going into the meal. If you only have 1 cup of wine, but you think they're going to bring you more wine, and you made Havdalah on that, and then they brought you more, and you said, and they didn't bring you more. So you made Havdalah, drank your wine, expected to have more wine for after the meal, because we're talking about a guy who's always strict to make to bench over a cup of wine. So then what should you do? So then some say you should make your Birkat Hamazon on the cup of Havdalah, even though it now doesn't have a full cup of wine anymore. But then we leave that discussion because it's not so practical. I don't know how many people today are strict to make Havdalah over a cup of wine. I'll tell you what Rabbi Bigman told me, which was interesting. Sorry?
You did see it, so.
Really, hey?
Oh, it's not, yeah.
At Yeshiva we used to, but only on Shabbos.
Oh.
And Shabbos are all the meals we do, and then during the week we never did. So I don't think that's the way the Gemara is talking about it is that you would do it. I mean Saturday night, So people would do it at every bread meal. They would make Birkat Hamazon on the wine, like Kiddush. I mean they view it as a thing as like Kiddush. It's like you couldn't make Kiddush without a cup of wine. How could you make Birkat Hamazon without a cup of wine? And as I said, that it doesn't seem that people are strict about. What Rabbi Bigman said, which is interesting, was, I'm trying to think who it was he quoted, but might have been at his yeshiva even in America, but maybe Aaron Soloveitchik. He says, if you're making Birkat Hamazon at Sudash Lishit on the cup of wine, then drink the wine. That's the obligation of Havdalah, only kicks in after that. If this is part of Sudash Lishit, because we do a funny thing, we make a Birkat Hamazon over the cup of wine, but then we don't say Brei Paragafen and drink the wine. So then we're not making it over the cup. We're just holding wine as a prop in our hand. It's a funny arrangement. So therefore, he quoted, I don't know if it was Rabbi Aaron Soloveitchik, we quoted his rabbi who said, so therefore you either don't do it with a cup or you do it with a cup and you drink the wine, which quite frankly makes sense. Then in the next halakha, if you want to make Havdalah and then eat straight away, you need to be careful that they don't bring bread to the table before Havdalah. Why not? Because remember, we're in trouble if you start saying the bracha on the wine before the bread. But you can't say the bracha on the bread before the wine because you haven't made Havdalah yet. So make sure not to bring the bread to the table before Havdalah. If you did, then cover it. Same as Friday night. You're not allowed to do any malacha before you make Havdalah. However, if you did Havdalah in your davening, then you're allowed to, even though you haven't yet made Havdalah over your cup of wine. And what if you need to do malacha before you even daven? So then you say, Hamavdil. That's all the Shulchan Aruch says. Hamavdil. And the Ramo adds in, Bein Kodesh Lachol. Bein Kodesh uvein Hachol. Bein Kodesh uvein Hachol. And Machaber adds in, that's without the bracha, and you do and then you do whatever you need to do. So they don't bring in the word Baruch either. Right? It's just
just
hamavdil. So the Mishnah Brura brings that that's the Shulchan Aruch's text, but the Levush has this one of the other halachic commentaries. It's a slightly different text. Baruch hamavdil bein hakodesh uvein hachol. And nevertheless, this isn't considered a bracha because he's not saying it with Hashem's name. And he says, why does this work? Why is that good enough? Because, in his words, lehekeira ba'alma lelavot et hamelech. This is just as a heker, a sign, something recognizable to escort the king. This is just to say that Shabbos has left the building. That's the idea. And you don't need to say, he adds in, Ben Kodesh L'chol, Ben Or L'chol, Baruch HaMavdil, Ben Kodesh L'chol, Ben Or L'chol, Shebech Yisrael. No, it's enough to say Ben Kodesh L'chol. However, that is all good as far as Malacha goes. But for food, you need the proper Havdalah. Then the Ramor adds in, so to women who are not going to be davening Ma'ariv and therefore aren't going to be making Havdalah in their davening, you should teach them to say, HaMavdil Ben Kodesh L'chol. It's the Ramor then changes. So the last line, the Ramor himself said, Bein HaKodesh u'Bein HaChol, and here he says, HaMavdil Bein Kodesh L'chol. So obviously, they don't view it as important, that, the particular formulation. Sometimes we even count the words, like with Kaddish. There's a whole thing of counting the words of Kaddish. And that's why when it's Eseret Yemei Tshuva, we say La'ela, La'ela, and then we take out Min Kol and turn it into Mikol, so that it's got the right number of words. But yeah, that's not the concern. So you should teach women who aren't going to be davening to say Mavdil Ben Kodesh L'chol before they do any malacha. Some say all of this is when we're talking about real malacha, like writing, weaving. But to just light a candle or to just take from one place to another, you don't need it. That's what he says, right? To just light a candle. So the Mishnah, that's exactly my response. The Mishnah Brura says the reason is since according to the Torah you don't actually need Havdalah, it's just a rabbinic institution. So therefore they were lenient in malachot that don't carry any effort. So here he's distinguishing. Now the truth is, we always make a big deal about the fact that we always make a big deal about nothing to do with effort. I think the answer is like this. There are two aspects. There's an effort aspect and there's a creative aspect. Sure.
It's a delivery from Belarus.
Okay, so two other factors over here. So the one is, I would say, we do find an importance given to labor and to creative work. So even though the Torah Malacha is usually defined by creative work and not by labor, we find that the rabbis prohibited certain things that have to do with labor, even if they don't have creative work, like feeding animals that don't belong to you and that kind of thing, because it's extra effort. And then on the flip side, on the flip side, this is quite strongly contested, this idea. And in fact, the Mishnah Brura quotes the Magen Avraham and others and the Beit Yosef, and they say, well, what is this that you're differentiating between these different kinds of melachot? Where do we ever find this?
Lighting a fire is a primary thing.
Exactly. Now, the Brisker Rov explained this kind of way. I mean, this whole thing sounds very strange, this whole distinction. So the Brisker also had that question, and he asked, where does this come from? He says that this prohibition of malacha is not an extension of Shabbat. It's a different rule. You shouldn't do malacha before you've made havdalah. In other words, in the summer, it's a very clever brisker chakira, right? In the same way that you shouldn't eat before shacharit, and you shouldn't do malacha before lighting Chanukah again, whatever it is, right? You shouldn't do other stuff before the mitzvah. That's what we're talking about over here. Shabbos is out. It's going to be Shabbos. Out of the honor of havdalah, saves the day. Brisk saves the day. But I would say, I hope they wouldn't mind me. They would mind me saying so. But this isn't the pshat. It's not the straightforward thing is that it carries on. And somebody came up with this distinction. But as I said, the majority of the rabbis don't like it anyway. They don't like that distinction anyway. So it's really a question on a minority opinion that made it into Shulchan Aruch. It's a question of minority opinion, and that's the story. Okay. And even the Ramo himself, who quotes these opinions, says Ha'ikar Kasfora Rishona. The main one is like the first opinion that you shouldn't do any malacha before you've done this. Now the Mishna Brura raised the interesting one. He says there is a custom that's brought, and it's especially a Kabbalistic custom that. I'm not sure if it's a Kabbalistic custom only. He quotes the Zohar, but then he also quotes the Or Zarua, that you shouldn't light a candle until after the Atah Kadosh. So Saturday night we say the Atah Kadosh. You shouldn't actually light a candle until that point. So it's not, for lighting a candle, it's actually stricter. So there's two aspects to lighting a candle. On the one hand, lighting a candle is easier because it's just an easy thing to do. On the other hand, lighting a candle is more significant because it's providing light or something. So some say you can do it even before Baruch Mavdil, and some say you should wait all the way till V'atah Kadosh. However, he says the Chazan is allowed to light candles after Atachonein or even after Baruch Mavdil, because the whole community's got a daven Ma'ariv and they're busy sitting in the dark. So even though ideally we would wait till the end of Ma'ariv to light, we've got to let the Chazan light, because otherwise, we're not actually going to be able to daven. Okay. And then he says, but certainly people would be allowed to move candles around and whatever else. The Maharil used to fold up his talus immediately after Shabbat came out in order to engage in a mitzvah immediately. In other words, as soon as Shabbos came out, he said, I'm Avdil, then he'd fold up his talus so that he was doing. Why didn't he fold up his talus before?
You don't in the creases, huh?
Yeah, so we do it, but not on the creases. Presumably he didn't do it because, again, it's a bit of a trick to do it, it's acceptable, but it's, and it even makes sense. It's not like, actually, I'll take back what I said, it's about a trick. You want to fold it nicely, whatever. So he didn't fold it, and then Shabbos came out, he folded it nicely. I'm not like the Mario. I don't fold my talus because I'm lazy, and I often only do it on Sunday morning after I'm finished davening. But that's a different. That's not a minhag. That's just a bad character trait. So now he says, some say you should draw water every Motzei Shabbat because the well of Miriam cycles around the world, and if somebody gets it at that moment, every second, it's somewhere, and if you get it at that moment, it is a panacea. And he says, but I've never seen anyone doing this, actually. Okay, so it's an interesting one. There are some who write this minhag, but it's like an unknown minhag. Okay, number 300. You should set your table on Motzei Shabbos. Shulchan Aruch says you should always set your table on Motzei Shabbos in order to escort away the Shabbat, even if you only want to eat just a little bit. So the Mishnah Brura explains what that means is you spread the tablecloth nicely, and whatever you would do, when it comes to actually setting the table nicely, you don't need to make food and, prepare more than what you want to eat. But in other words, make it like a nice little meal. The Gemara implies that you should actually have this as a bread meal. like the other Shabbos meals. And that seems the best. And in fact, it's even better if you can get meat or other cooked dishes. But if not, or if you really are full,
This is after Shabbat.
this is after Shabbat. For example, it's summer that you only ate Suda Shlishit quite late anyway. So then have mezonot or fruit or something. But the idea is it shouldn't just be a little snack standing in the kitchen. Go sit at the table and have something to eat in order to escort Shabbat. Because just as you need to honor Shabbat when it comes in, so do you need to honor Shabbat when it goes out. It's like a person would escort the king when he leaves the city. From this reason, it seems it's good to do it as early as possible. Do this meal earlier on so that it's close to Shabbat leaving. Because you're doing it at 10 o'clock at night, and Shabbos was out at 6:30. Doesn't really fit so well. What if you're not hungry? So okay, then at least don't start working until you've had this. So, okay, wait a little bit, sit down, read, learn a little bit or something. Okay, and the Sharei Tshuva says you should at least do it before midnight. The early sages said that there is one part of a person called the niskoi. Okay, we've heard of it called the luz, but he calls it the niskoi. And this remains in the grave until after the resurrection, until the time of the resurrection. And even after all the rest of the bones have rotted, this part of the body, he calls it an aver, he doesn't say explicitly it's a bone. This aver, this part of the body, does not and this aver doesn't actually benefit from any food except for the malava malka. The idea here is if you're careful with malava malka, then you are feeding your niskui, and then that's going to remain for the resurrection. And you should know that the truth is this meal is not an obligation at the level of the 3 meals of Shabbat. Because there's an actual textual hint. Remember, it says hayom three times, and this is just a good thing to do. What's the difference? Is that if you've got to choose between a Shabbat meal and a Saturday night meal, so choose the Saturday night meal. Some have a custom of lighting more candles on Saturday night than they normally would during the week, because that's also part of escorting the Shabbat. So normally you would only turn on a little bit of light, you turn on more light, make it more of a special environment. And there's also a custom to sing songs, Piyutim and Zmirot, after Havdalah. That's where some people sing Eliyahu Hanavi, I guess, and that kind of thing. Bar Yochai is this Faradi one, right? Yeah, I think that's for Saturday night. 301.
Just be respectful when Shabbat goes.
That's the main thing. That's the main thing. Number 301. What are you allowed to, which kalim are you allowed to go out with on Shabbat and which may you not? So this, I think, is going to be speaking about carrying. You're not allowed to run on Shabbat unless you're going to a mitzvah. For example, shul, etc. And you're also not allowed to... so the Mishnah Brura points out there's 2 things. The one is you're not allowed to take large steps even during the week. It seems maybe that's arrogant or something like that. Even during the week, there's this idea of taking large steps. But on Shabbat, there's an extra prohibition of walk differently on Shabbat to the rest of the week. Now, this was something I really noticed when I started walking more, is that when I'm walking during the week, I walk with purpose and mission, and I'm going somewhere. And the idea is on Shabbat, you should stroll, unless you're going to the mitzvah. But again, where do I go to on Shabbat? I'm either coming to shul or I'm going home for lunch. I think you can justify in both. So you can justify in both cases. But if you're going for a walk, so don't walk with a purpose, rather stroll. Okay. And the Ramo says you're not allowed to take these large steps. In fact, he actually gives the size of a step. You can't even take a step the size of an amma if you could take less of a step. Right? And the Mishnah Brura says, similarly, you're not allowed to jump. Okay? So the idea is, again, stroll, not rush. Then the Shulchan Aruch continues, young men who get great joy from jumping and running, then they're allowed to. And so too, to see anything that they would get pleasure from. So they want to run to go and see something. Hey, there's a whale down at the promenade. They want to run to go get down to the whale. That would be acceptable. The question comes up about running on Shabbos, like exercise running on Shabbos.
Okay.
So how would we categorize that? Would we categorize that as these young men who get great joy from jumping and running around? Or would we say that's like exercise routine, something different? I'll just tell you that Rabbi Stav mentioned to me that this is a big discussion in Israel today. In presumably the religious community, I don't think anyone else would be asking that it's a big discussion. I mean, I think we both know with runners, they are right. It's not just that they're on a training schedule, but it's almost an addiction that you have to. Once you're on the running train, you just have to keep running. So then now they have to keep running. Right? But it's Shabbos, so can they keep running? That's the question. Okay. You were running, you beg your pardon, you weren't running, you were walking, and you came to a river or a canal. You are allowed to jump over it. It's better to, and then it's actually better to jump over it than to walk around it. Because if you're going to walk around it, it's going to end up costing you more effort, through the whole circumvention. You're not allowed to go through it, though, because you're going to end up squeezing out your clothes. And the Ramor says you are allowed to go for a stroll, like to go for a walk for pleasure. That's not considered. Rabbi Stav brings that, by the way, as justification for leisure. We see that there's a concept of leisure in Judaism from the fact that you're going for these kinds of walks. Then he says you're going towards a mitzvah, for example, to greet your rabbi or somebody who's greater than you in wisdom. In other words, a rabbi, so it's your rabbi or a shiur. You are allowed to even go through this river, as long as you do it with a bit of a shinui. For example, that you put your hand in your jacket and you don't take it out, so that you're always remembering and you're not ending up wringing out your garment. So you have to do something like that to remind yourself. You're not allowed to cross with your sandals because you're not able to tie it and untie it properly. We're worried that it's going to fall off or come undone, and you're going to be end up carrying it. With shoes, it's okay, but with these sandals, that could be undone, and you might end up carrying them. That's going to be a problem.
You have to lift your pants up. You can't get your clothes wet.
You even can get your clothes wet. When you're going to do a mitzvah, you even can. It's not ideal. Yeah. But what's the problem of getting your clothes wet is that we're worried you're going to squeeze them out. So if you...
Isn't it like washing?
It could be. Maybe it would depend on how clean or dirty the water is. What does the Mishna Brura say here?
Depends on what they wore.
They
wore socks, so just lift your pants up.
Yeah, actually he says, the Achronim actually say, it's actually even better to take a long route round rather than going in the water. Here's an interesting one. He says, what if the wife's rabbi's in town and she wants to go see him? Do the same rules apply? So he says, yeah, provided she's got her husband's permission. Why does it say you can...
They've got different rabbis.
Sorry? Yeah. Or it could be father, because he says you're also allowed to go greet your father, so could speak about her father as well. But so the student wants to go through the river to greet the rabbi. We said that's fine. What if the rabbi wants to go through the river to greet the student? He says no, then that's not good. Unless the rabbi needs the student. For example, he really asks the great question. This is the student that the rabbi needs to practice his shiur with. He needs to learn it, he needs to go through it, and the student's going to ask relevant questions and point it out. So then he can, because he needs them, and so forth. Yeah.
It's got to be contextual, because if you're wearing socks and shoes in your school,
yes,
you can't walk through a river. You can't carry it, right?
You're not allowed to carry it. So he doesn't bring in this problem of washing it. His concern is that it's going to get wet, and therefore you're going to end up squeezing it out. So therefore, if you do this trick where you stick your hand in your jacket, then that's going to be all right. Okay. Now, if you're going to do a mitzvah, you're allowed to walk through the river there, but how are you going to get home again? So the answer is you're allowed to walk through the river to get home again as well. Because if we don't allow you to do that, then you're not going to go. So that's the famous precedent that we have with all these things, with the doctors driving home on shift and all that kind of thing. If you're going to take care of your fruit, so you are allowed to walk through water to get there, but not to get back. And the idea there is you're going for business reasons. Okay, so whether that's ideal or not, let's leave that for now. But he is going for business reasons. Mishna Brura says the truth is taking care of your money is also ktsat mitzvah. Okay, so therefore it's allowed. But why didn't they let you
look after his fruit that's growing somewhere?
Yeah, in other words, he's a farmer. He's in Stellenbosch. So he's a farmer.
It's a business activity.
It's a business activity, but he's not going there to. He's not going to do that. He's not going to put on fertilizer. But maybe he wants to. He's worried that guys are stealing his stuff, and he needs to go watch it. So
looking after your money is a bit of a mitzvah. It says.
Yeah, looking after your money is a bit of a mitzvah. Nami have a ktsat mitzvah. I mean, the truth is, we've got good proofs for that. Where do we see somebody who went to great lengths to take care of their money? It was Yaakov. He goes all the way back across the river to get, Rashi says, to get pachim katanim, to get these little jugs, that he'd left there. So we see from there that got to be. Wasn't Shabbat. But there we see that this is what Yaakov did. We see this value of taking care of your stuff. So that's the same thing over here. So you worry that people are saying, well, birds or whatever else, and I'm going there to take care of it. So the rabbi said, okay, we will let you go. Oh, what about coming back? We're not going to let you come back. Oh, but then I'm not going to go next time. Fine, don't go next time. That doesn't bother us. So this one, it's much more up to your discretion. So you say, oh, I'm not going to go to the shiur next time. Okay, you can go, so you can come back whenever you want. You got to. But the money will let you go, but we're not invested in you going in the same way. And Mishna Brura adds in, you'd have to do the same hand in the jacket trick. Okay. Then he says, whoever would go out with something that is not jewelry and is not clothing, and he takes it out in a way that people usually take it, then that would be on Shabbat. That's carrying. So again, it's not jewelry, it's not clothing, and you're taking it out in the normal way. Got your keys in your pocket. That would be the problem. Any jewelry which is loose and could easily fall, that's forbidden by the rabbis to take it, because we're worried it's going to fall and you're going to end up carrying it. But it's not a Torah prohibition, because it is actually jewelry. A woman shouldn't go out with the kind of jewelry that she's going to end up taking off and showing to people. Therefore, a man shouldn't go out with a sword, a bow, or a shield, nor a spear, nor with anything that is not jewelry. And if he did, he has violated the Torah. He similarly can't go out with a helmet or with thing called greaves, leg armor. And if he did go out, he would be patur, because he's wearing them as clothing. So don't do it because the rabbi still didn't want you to. You might end up taking it off or whatever. But we can't say you're chayev because you're not carrying it, you're wearing it. You may not go out with tefillin because you would need to take them off when you came to the toilet. Now there, it's not a problem of wearing tefillin, it's an obligation. But it's not a problem to walk around wearing tefillin on Shabbat, because it's not. It's wearing. It's clothing. It's holy clothing, but it's clothing. It'd be the same as a talis or whatever. But since when you get to the bathroom, you'd have to take it off. That would be a problem. Now here's an interesting one.
You can put on tefillin on Shabbat.
You can. That's what he's saying.
Okay.
People always say it's muktzah, right?
I don't know.
But he doesn't. That's what people say. He doesn't seem to see this as a problem. Here we go. It seems this implies that at home there's no problem putting on tefillin, but that's only provided you're putting it on not for the sake of a mitzvah, but for a mitzvah you're not allowed to. But Jay says it outright. Mishnah Berurah is quite explicit. Tefillin not totally not muktzah. People always say they're muktzah.
No, that's not a
Yeah. Okay, since you would need to take them off if you went to the bathroom. Yeah, and he makes this explicit again, even though it's not the time for tefillin, since at the end of the day it is. Now, here's an interesting question. When there's no Eruv, or people who don't hold for the Eruv, what do you always see them wearing to and from shul? Talis. Now, let me ask you, would they wear that talis in the bathroom?
Sure.
They would not. So, therefore, it would seem to be the same problem with tefillin. Just as you're not allowed to go out with tefillin because you would have to take that tefillin off when you went to the bathroom and you might end up carrying them. Guys in Constantia, right? He's going to walk through. So maybe he needs to stop going to the public bathroom. So he's going to take off his talis. So that's the same problem. You shouldn't be able to. Either you leave it at shul or you leave it at home. It's a good one to ask about, to follow up. Okay. Yeah, that's me. Okay. So then he says, if you've got a small foot, don't go with big shoes. He's actually saying a child shouldn't go with adult shoes, but it's all the same, that same kind of principle. You can go out with big clothing because it's not going to fall off. Don't go out with one shoe on unless you've got an injury on that foot, because people are going to laugh at you and you're going to end up carrying that shoe. But if you have got an injury on the foot, then you walk with the one shoe because you're not feeling embarrassed. There's a reason behind what you're doing. It's interesting also. We see that embarrassment is not a function of whether people laugh at you. It's whether you feel that you deserve the mockery or not. If you feel you're a righteous victim of, if you feel that you're justly being victimized, then that's a real thing.
No, it doesn't. It doesn't put things in higher order categories.
Yeah.
It doesn't say don't do anything that you will, don't carry anything that you might, don't go out with anything you might come to carry.
Yes.
These are examples.
Exactly.
Just gives
I
examples.
feel like the Rambam would do that.
Yeah.
I haven't learned enough Rambam to say for sure, but I feel that's more the. This is much more of the Mishnah-yatic style. Okay, yeah, he's going to give more examples. Going out with a pin, a needle. Okay, we won't go through that one. Rings, signet rings, not signet rings. Rings with stones inside. Something that serves a double purpose. It's both jewelry and it's a use. For example, silver keys, which are worn as jewelry. That's no good, because people will say you're using them, you're taking them out to use. Some say you're allowed to do it if it actually is made of silver. Okay, so now where would that come in?
But people, you wear the keys on the belt anyway?
Yes, so the belt's a different thing because you're using it as a link in the chain of the useful belt. So that's not jewelry. Where I have heard it is, this came up in Durban all the time because Durban doesn't have an Eruv. So there were people who wanted to have a necklace and hang a ring on the necklace. It wasn't even a silver, hang a key on the necklace. It wasn't even a silver key. It was just like a regular key.
A connecting piece between...
No, just like a charm.
Yeah.
So I said, that's not, it's, you're carrying it on the necklace. You're not using it as a necklace. Yeah. Even to use it as a necklace is controversial, but to hang it on the necklace. So then they said, okay, so what if I would make it actually like a beautiful key that it's a piece of jewelry? So now that's the discussion. That's the discussion. And probably there's room to permit it. Okay.
It's carrying a key in a different way anyway. And it's
yeah.
It's a little...
Yeah. It's not a real Rishon Harabim. Yeah. And now he says, some say the custom on that is to be lenient. What does that mean? The custom is to be lenient. Okay, they're going into a slightly different idea. Okay. And then they're speaking about a tailor and his needles. Guy's got gonorrhea and he's got medical equipment. Can I call it that? Or a woman's a nidder. So what's the general rule is? General rule is that can be problematic. Okay, you'd have to.
The needle of the tailor would be problematic.
Needle of the tailor would be problematic.
The rest would be.
No, because
Health necessity, right?
well, we're talking about. So this guy with gonorrhea, he's got like a little bag that he ties around so that things don't get dirty. But that's like almost a bit external. It's not like instead of underwear, right? Not something in his underwear. So that could be more of a problem. Something which is clothing or is done in a way of clothing. Even if you're only wearing it for practical reasons, that would be fine. So the example is a raincoat. I'm wearing a raincoat as clothing, but that isn't my clothing. I don't go out with a raincoat unless it's raining. I'm wearing it to protect me from the rain, but I'm still wearing it as clothing. Or a hat. So you can wear hats as clothing, but you can also wear hats as. This comes up with the question comes up with scarves and with watches. So Rav Moshe Feinstein actually connects the two. He gave the heter for wearing watches. Not everyone did. I think Rabbi Goldfein didn't wear a watch. Stand to be correct, but he did say that in Tells they didn't wear watches. So then I'm almost certain that he didn't wear a watch. And he said because they believe that you were carrying something on your wrist. It's not. You're not wearing. That's just how you carry. Whereas Rabbi Moshe Feinstein says, now you find in the Gemara there was a kind of a scarf that was only there as like a dust scarf. You'd use it to wipe things out your eyes or something like that. It was something that you hung around your neck for a functional purpose, and that was considered okay. So he says it's the same thing. You're tying it around your wrist. Now I would say today. Also, it can depend. If you've got like a little Casio digital watch, that's strictly functional. But many, if not most people who wear Shabbos watches today are wearing nice watches. So then it's jewelry. Then it's not even a question.
Signet ring? Is there a problem with the signet ring? That's pure jewelry, right?
Yes, a signet ring is pure jewelry. The question, so this comes up as a whole discussion. Because
is there any problem with the tailor and his needle? Was anything else a problem? Is a gonorrhea a problem? A woman in needle can't be a problem.
What?
A woman in needle can't be a problem.
I would imagine that what we're talking about, the woman needle would do today. I would imagine that's considered derech malbush. It's considered like clothing.
Yeah.
I can't say for sure, but I would guess so. Must be. Now he does have a problem with rings. I think we're going to see later on. I seem to recall. There we go. That he said. That's exactly. Now I think we're going to see later on, number 18, that our way of dealing with jewelry has changed.
Yes, because the women won't listen.
It could be because of that. Yeah, it could be because of that. Could be because of that.
They shouldn't wear jewelry, but they're not going to listen.
That's right. That is what it is actually. Yeah. So let's see what else he says. Prosthetics. So he says you've got a guy with a prosthetic leg. If it's not done, if it doesn't enable him to walk and he still needs a stick, then that's no good. Because the only reason he's wearing it is for aesthetic reasons. So it looks like he has a leg. So then he can't go out with it because it's not actually helping him walk. So that's the only case that he gives. Presumably then, if it is something that does enable him to walk, then it wouldn't be a problem. And the Mishna Brura adds, the whole problem here is that we're worried he's going to end up taking it off and carrying it because it's not helping him walk anyway. Okay, if we're talking about somebody who's in a wheelchair, and we give him again some kind of prosthetics, this also can be a problem because it's the kind of thing that he's helping himself along on his hands, and these things go on for comfort, but they come off or whatever else. But they go through other kinds that are permissible. So it seems, again, the general rule, I have to look into it for specific cases, but the general rule is if it's actually necessary, or if it's actually if you're actually using it to get around, then that's fine. If it's aesthetic, then that's more of an issue. Okay.
Self-driving, battery-operated car.
Yeah, it's an interesting one. Rabbi Furziger said he gave a share about that.
Yeah.
Not here in America. Yeah. Okay, a lame person who needs a stick. He's allowed to use such a stick. If he's unable to walk without the stick, he's allowed to use the stick. But if he's able to walk without the stick, and it just provides him extra strength, then it's no good. Now, this question came up for me once. I sprained my ankle shortly before Yom Kippur. This was at the yeshiva. They didn't have an Arab in those days. So I sprained my ankle shortly before Yom Kippur. So I wanted to know, could I come with crutches to yeshiva on Yom Kippur? So I asked Rabbi David Goldfein. I'm pretty sure he asked me, could you walk without it? I said, look, it would be really sore, but I could. So he said, well, then you can't. Somebody else told me I shouldn't have asked him. I should have asked someone else.
Yeah, that's right.
But I never regretted it. I never regretted it. Yeah, so that's the idea. And he says the Mishna Brura says anything on that. If you can't walk without it, then he says it's like your shoe. It's a nice analogy. Just like your shoe's not carrying, because that's how you're walking. So to the sticks, okay, because that's how you're walking. He says, what about an older person who at home walks around without a stick? When he goes outside, he goes on a stick because he gets tired for a long journey or something. Even if he gets shaky, he says, no, it's still no good. Because the truth is, he doesn't need it. It's just saying to help him. But if he actually can't walk without it, then he can. Okay, the same kind of thing. I wouldn't be surprised if, for such a case, for such a person, we might be able to find. Yeah, might be able to.
I just don't want it to be kind of slippery slope to everyone.
Yeah. Blind person, can he go out with his stick? No, because it's interesting. Blind people went with sticks in those days. No, you can't, because you can walk without a stick. It's not for walking, it's just for seeing. So he is carrying it. Dafka, the whole point of that stick is to carry it. Okay. What if a guy's in shackles? Is he allowed to walk around with his shackles?
I get that question often.
No, almost never actually. Once, twice a year. So he says he can. Why? Because it's like his clothing. Okay, that's how the prison has dressed him. That's his prison uniform. Okay. Okay, you can't go out with the Chinese dragons, where you go inside the dragon, and you can't go with that. Or on stilts. Or with scary masks on to frighten children. You can't go out carrying boxes, but you can with. Oh, you can't go out like wearing boxes. It seems some kind of wooden clothing.
Oh, you put some in the box.
Yeah. He says you want to protect yourself from the rain, but you can wearing like sackcloth if you're wearing it. You can go with a bandage on a wound, because they are wrapped around you, so it's like jewelry, or other things like that. But if they fall off, don't put them back on, and don't put them on initially. I don't know if you're saying at home or in the street. Because you're not allowed to do medical things on Shabbat. That's the problem. Okay. If little children have got bells tied, sewn onto their clothing, they're allowed to go with that. But if the bells are not like sewn on, they're just tied on loosely, then that's a problem. Why would these little boys have bells on their clothing? I think it was to help their parents know where they were.
These tackies with lights in them.
Yeah. I think that's what it was. Okay, and then he says. What about these yellow circles that the king says every Jew has to have them on his clothes? That's fine, even if it's not sewn onto your clothes, just attached a little bit. Why is that? Because it's considered clothing, because this is how you go all days of the week. And we don't worry that you're going to be embarrassed and take it off, because you might go to jail if you don't have it on. So that's the idea. And you're allowed to go with this scarf that you clean your face. That's what I mentioned from Moshe Feinstein. No, he's talking about this is slightly different. It's like a handkerchief that cleans your face, provided it's attached to your clothing. So I guess that would be like the pocket handkerchief or whatever. It's interesting. In Durban, so I started wearing those pocket handkerchiefs on Yom Tov. I had a friend at the yeshiva used to wear them on Yom Tov. So that was a clever idea. Shabbos you can't, but Yom Tov you can. So Durban started wearing it on Yom Tov. And then there were people in Durban, a couple of guys started imitating me, but on Shabbos. They obviously weren't sensitive to when I wasn't. So then I stopped altogether. Okay. Now, here's an interesting one. You can't go out with an inexpert amulet, but you can with an expert amulet. What's the difference? The basic thing is, so I would say the Shulchan Aruch is not ruling whether they do work or don't work, but it's whether you believe it works or doesn't work. If you believe that it really works and it's been tried and tested and proven, so then you're going to wear it regardless. And if you don't actually believe that it's going to work, so then you might end up taking it off and carrying it. Okay, there's a whole section of what's considered expert or inexpert. Yeah. Now, what about other kinds of lucky charms? The egg of a chargol of a locust. Sounds very small. Locust egg, or a fox's tooth, or a splinter from the cross. What do you mean a splinter from the cross? Of crucifixion, not the crucifixion, a crucifixion, but a splinter from a dead man's cross. You can go out with all of these things. Isn't it considered darchei emori? Isn't it considered these non-Jewish practices? No. Now, okay, they would have asked me. You would have asked me, I would have said yes, but they didn't ask me. Yeah. And so too, anything which serves the purpose of healing. But if it doesn't, if we don't see it having anything to do with healing, then it's forbidden because of darchei emori. Okay. So here's the idea, is that they didn't have the scientific method. And with their small sample size, it just worked out that there were a bunch of oaks wearing fox tooths and a bunch of oaks wearing wolf tooths. And the oaks with the wolf tooth died and the oaks with the fox tooth lived. So we now see that fox tooth is good for your health. So therefore the rabbi said you can go out with a fox tooth because this is not superstition, it's a remedy. Okay, so I would now refilter this again, with the scientific method.
Well, the problem is that if you hear the story that the fox tooth works, right?
Yeah.
You don't know exactly what it's based on.
Yes.
You wear the fox tooth.
Yeah.
It's
Yeah.
It's possible of what I area, but
yeah.
you're doing it for the right reason.
Yeah, no, that's it. You don't think it's appealing to spray. You're not wearing it to channel the power of the fox to heal you. That's the real point over here. You're wearing it because there's enzymes in the fox tooth, which so it's all nonsense. But that's why it's stupid, not avodah zarah. It's ill-informed. Ill-informed, not misdirected. I don't know. Yeah, I think we understand the distinction. Okay. Yeah. Some say, listen, any amulet which isn't an expert amulet is a problem of Darchem worry. Okay, but we understand that. He brings in something about lachash, about whispering, about like saying these charms. Incantations. Now, Rabbi Nachum Rabinovich brings from here something you maybe wouldn't have expected, to permit social work on Shabbos. Because he quotes, I think it's the Rashba, who says, these incantations don't work, but they make people feel better. They make people feel more assured. It's the placebo effect. Yeah. So he says, we see that making people feel better is a justification on Shabbat. So therefore, it's the same with psychology and social work and that kind of thing. You have to look at the exact context in which you were saying, but that was a point that extracted from there. Okay, somebody's got another kind of healing thing you have to worry about. You're walking out with a talus folded over your shoulders. That's a problem. Because, sorry?
What kind of healing? Don't know if to worry about?
Yeah, it's putting a coin on the injury on your foot.
Okay.
I trust you.
Trust me.
Don't do that too often. Okay. So you got to think now, this is a talus, you folded it up over your shoulders. So not like a normal way of wearing a talus. This is problematic. That's considered carrying. But if you wear it in a different way, the normal way of wearing it, then that would be fine. Okay. Even if it's slightly unusual, that's still not a problem. Based on this, you're allowed to wear a talus under your clothing and bring it to shul. Okay, he says you're going to have to look a little bit there. Now, this was my question. What about going to the bathroom? Look, one thing you could say is that the truth is it's not forbidden to wear a talus into the bathroom. After all, we wear the talit katan. Yeah. It's just the custom, it seems, as not to, out of honor for a garment that we use as davening. You're allowed to go out into the Reshut HaRabim with a talus around your neck. And the Ramah says, even though you place the right side on your left shoulder, because this is just for appearance or beauty, and this is fine. So what he says is, the Mishnah Brura says, well, it depends on the fashion of the place, basically. In the previous one where it said you're not allowed to do it that way, that was because that wasn't how people wore it. And here it's speaking about a case where this is how people wear it. Okay, then they speak a little bit more about different ways of wearing the talus. Okay, you're not allowed to go out with coins sewn into your clothing. Some permit it if you're worried about a loss. In other words, I'm staying in a disreputable hotel. They're going to ransack my room. So Erev Shabbos, I sew the coins into my clothing. Some permit it, and we do permit it in such a case. If you don't have a better option of sitting in the inn, I mean, maybe the only meals somewhere that you have to leave. Very interesting that they had to ask these questions and that they put them in Shulchan Aruch.
Maybe a read issue.
Sorry?
It seems like it could be a read issue.
Yeah. Okay, and more about the different kinds of handkerchiefs and different other kinds of sheets, hard sheets.
that you wear.
Yes, you're not allowed to put those on because like these kind of hard sheets, because you're just pretending to wear them basically. You are allowed to go out with two pieces of clothing, one on top of the other, whether for you or for your friend. So two jerseys, you know, whether it's two jackets or two shirts, or something like that. Even if there's nothing in between them. Some say you can't wear two belts, one on top of the other, unless there's some clothing in between them, because then at least the one's on the other, and that's the correct way. You are allowed to wear two hats, one on top of the other. And one thing I'm wondering about is
That was the whole thing with raincoats, right?
yes, that is a discussion. Because the Mishnah Brura says, because the truth is during the week there's this idea of putting a big hat on top of a small hat. I think that means you're wearing your kippah and you're wearing your kippah all the time and you put your hat on top of that. So therefore it wouldn't be a problem. And then there's one other thing I was thinking. Question comes up with ties. So I'll tell you why I say this. I remember I was walking with a friend of mine and he discovered he had a tie in his pocket. So now the question was, could he now just put that on and now go with two ties? I would think not, just based on what we've seen. It seems, is it realistic? Are there times you'd wear two jackets? In other words, a jacket and a coat or something, or two shirts, but two belts you wouldn't wear. So I would think two ties you also wouldn't wear. But we'll have to see. There is still more to do on this. They're going through several more examples, different pieces of clothing, talking about even with Torahs and tefillin, what to do in a case of a fire, things like that. So there's a little more, which we'll please God cover next week. And then we'll
Where are we?
We are chapter 301, number 37.
Okay.
Thank you.